Hello and welcome to ATS. We're in March 2021, and whether you're new to the gun community or you've been around a long time, you're well aware of the fact that ammunition is very difficult to find, whether it be for handguns or for rifles. And when you do find it, it's ridiculously expensive. I mean, we're paying 3 to 4 times what we paid a year and a half ago. So people are saying, what is the alternative? What can I do? Well, there's dry fire. A lot of people talking about dry fire. What's dry fire? Dry firing is taking your pistol or your rifle, making sure it is empty, pointed in a safe direction, and practice your trigger control, your aiming, and your grip, whether it be a handgun or a rifle. There are some aids out there that you can put a laser inside of your barrel, and you have a program on your phone where you can fire at a paper target, and it will show you the hits. And those are great. They're maybe a little bit expensive, but it's just, for me, it's not the same as firing a projectile downrange. So what I like to do when I don't have the ammo, or I want to conserve my ammo, is to shoot a pellet or a BB pistol or a rifle. Now, as far as pistols are concerned, there's a lot on the market, and there are different styles. A lot of them are designed to look just like a Glock that you might own, or a Sig Sauer, or a CZ, or a Smith & Wesson. So that's cool in that you have the same feel as your carry gun or the gun that you take to the range. So that's a great thing. Most of the pellet pistols and rifles are going to have a rifle barrel. And if you don't know what a rifle barrel is, that's a spiral groove that goes through the barrel, and it causes the pellet, or in the case of a real gun, bullet, to spin. And when it comes out of the barrel, it's spinning, and it will fly a lot truer and straighter and more accurate. So today we're not going to really be talking about the pistols. We're going to be talking about air rifles. Probably 90% of what we're talking about here with rifles is going to apply to pistols as well. So, again, most of your pellet pistols and rifles are going to have the rifle barrel. There are going to be some combinations, like a rifle that will shoot pistol or will shoot 177 caliber BBs as well as 177 caliber pellets. That may or may not have the rifle barrel. Your cheaper ones, like a $50 range, are not going to have a rifle barrel. If you spend a little more money, you're going to get the rifle barrel. So here's the first thing I'm going to show you. And this is made by Crosman, and a lot of companies make them. This is the 2100 Classic. Okay? So this one takes BBs and pellets. This one does have a rifle barrel, which does nothing for the BBs, but it's great for the pellets. So with the BBs, you have a reservoir right here. You can load quite a few BBs in here. You put them in there, you close the cap, and then on this side, there's a little lever to pull back. You pull it back, you turn your muzzle, and you rotate it this way, and it will load BBs in this channel. So once it does that, when you pull back on the charging handle, it does two things. One, it cocks the gun, and then when you bring it forward, it will pick up a BB and put it in the chamber. Okay? Now this is a pump, so you have to pump it this way 3 to 10 times. You need at least 3 pumps to get the pellet out of the barrel. 10 times is maximum. Velocity, you're looking at about around 700, 725 feet per second. It's going to vary between guns. It's going to vary between pellet brands and weights. Speaking of pellets, the most common size pellets are .177 and 22 caliber. They also make a 25 caliber, which is not real common, but it's out there. You have to have a gun that will shoot that particular size. You cannot put a 22 or a 25 caliber in a .177. So that's real important. Now, I showed you how you load the BBs, but if you want to shoot pellets, you want to make sure all the BBs are out of this channel. I would like to have them out of the reservoir so there's no BBs in the gun whatsoever. And you have to load the pellets one at a time by pulling back on the handle, dropping it in one at a time. Closed end facing forward, open end facing the rear. Close the bolt, cock it, take the safety off, and you can fire. Now, do not put pellets in this reservoir because pellets are not round like a BB and they will not follow through. Now, that might sound like a simple thing, but I know people have done this, and what happens is it'll get jammed. Here, you have to disassemble the whole thing in order to clear it. So remember, BBs can go in a reservoir. Pellets have to be loaded one at a time, and you got to make sure there's no BBs in here. Okay, so that's a pump. The pump is your power system. Okay. Now, this happens to be another Crosman. This is a Crosman 1077, and this is a semi-automatic. Now, when people hear semi-automatics, all they hear is automatic, just like with rifles. They hear semi-automatic, they think it's a full automatic where you pull the trigger and it just sprays it. That's a full automatic, fully automatic. Semi-automatic, you have to keep pulling the trigger, okay? So now this one has a magazine at the very bottom here, and inside this magazine goes a little rotary clip. And that clip, I believe, holds 10 or 12 pellets. So basically, let's put it in here correctly. So once it's loaded, you can just keep pulling the trigger, keep firing until you run out of pellets. Now the power plant for this is not a pump, it's a CO2 cartridge. This is a 12-gram CO2 cartridge, which goes down inside this area here. And without getting into all the, basically how you do it, just know that this goes in here. You have to read your instructions so you know exactly how to do it and all the precautions you take. So you load it in there, and once you have the tube loaded and you have the magazine in, you're ready to go. You just take your safety off, cross bolt safety, and pull the trigger, and you go. So these are a lot of fun. These are also a rifle barrel. This one is in 177 caliber. It takes pellets only, no BBs, okay? And I personally like the straight pellets. I don't use the BBs. Like on the first one we looked at is a combination. I feel, and a lot of people feel, if you use BBs in a rifle barrel, because the barrels are not real high quality, you're going to eventually tear up the rifling in that barrel, and then now it's not going to be accurate for BB or pellets. So that's that. Now, there are rifles that I don't have one on the table here that are called PCP. That's pre-charged pneumatic. And basically, they're going to have a built-in bottle. It'll be like this, but it's going to be much larger and a very, very high PSI. So it has really good velocity. And because they're large, you're going to get a lot of shots out of it before you run out. Now, let's go back to the 12 gram. The 12 gram here, what you're going to notice is after you've fired a couple of magazines, you're going to notice that the velocity starts dropping. So you'll notice your bullet actually start hitting lower and lower and lower. And at some point, you'll actually be able to see the pellet fly through the air in an arc and hit your target. So that's the downside of this. You have to keep changing your small cartridges. On the big PCPs, especially the more expensive ones, they have a bigger tube that's built in. You have to fill it with like a scuba tank. And those can be expensive. They can be from $300 to $800 depending on the tank. So you fill that tank up and then you hook it up here and you fill this reservoir up, and then you fire and have a lot of fun. Now, most of the good ones of the PCPs are regulated. So what that means is it's going to keep the same velocity until you actually run out of air. It won't decrease, it'll stay the same until you get to the end. You're thinking, oh, well, that's cool, I'd rather have one of those. Well, that's great. But the cheap ones start at about $300 and they go up into thousands of dollars. Some of them are single shot, some have a rotary magazine. So there's a lot of types out there, and they are great, but they're expensive. But they're very expensive. This 1077 is it's less than $100, probably around $90. This Crosman is probably around $80. You can get them on Amazon. Um, so those are the types that were pump and um, CO2 or PCP. Now the last category we want to talk about is a brake barrel. Okay, and a brake barrel means you literally do this, then you have to cock it. You put a pellet in here, and then you lift up and lock it. Now you're ready to go. You take your safety off and you go. Now these come in two types. They come with a spring piston, which is literally a large coil spring that's compressed, and when you pull the trigger, it slams forward. Or you can get it with a gas piston. The gas piston, sorry about that. The gas piston is a little smoother. The spring piston, and this is the one we really want to talk about today, is a spring piston. What it does is when you compress it, again, and you pull the trigger, it slams forward. So it's literally having a reverse recoil to a regular gun. It's going forward and then backwards. They're really tough on cheap scopes. If you put a scope on here that is not made for a Springer, it's going to tear it up in nothing flat. So you have to get a scope that is designed to take that kind of recoil. Okay. Now, this one was not that expensive. This is a UTG. I think I paid about 50, 60 bucks for it on Amazon. It's a great scope. It actually has an illuminated reticle or just the plain black crosshairs. So the big issue with Springers is you cannot hold it like you would hold a normal rifle. Now, any of these other type, you can hold it tight, you can hold it loose. It doesn't matter because there's basically no recoil. Because this has a recoil, and because that spring, when it slaps closed, it also vibrates. So it's going to be really hard to make an accurate shot if you are gripping it here tight, pulling it into your shoulder tight, and gripping it here tight. What's going to happen is it's going to go, and your shots are going to be inconsistent. So when you're shooting a Springer, and the Springers are probably the least expensive of the brake barrels, they can be very accurate. You just have to know how to hold it. And how you hold it is very lightly. This grip up here is not a grip. It's basically just a channel to allow it to slide forward and backwards. Your grip here is very, very light, barely touching it. And this is a heavy gun. This one here is about 9 pounds without the scope. So it's pretty close to 10 pounds. So I use this for bench rest. You can get them much lighter. Gamma makes some really good ones that are very light. Crosman makes them. A lot of companies make them. So you can hold it. But I use it on a bench rest. And I'll set my hand here just as a channel, let it slide, and very light off my shoulder, almost not even touching my shoulder, and hold very lightly here and just easily pull that trigger, and it will fire, and you will find that it will be much more consistent than gripping it with a death grip. Okay. Now, let's talk about pellets. This one happens to be a 22 caliber. You can get them in .177. It's important to remember that whatever gun you buy, whichever rifle you buy, or a handgun, in a pistol, and BB or pellet, you want to make sure that you're using the right size. If it's a 177, make sure you use a .177 pellet. If it's a 22, use a 22. There are 25 caliber pellet rifles out there. They're not as common, but they're out there. So you must use the 25 caliber pellets. Now the PCPs we talked about earlier, that have the gas tube that you have to, or the tube that you have to fill with compressed air, those come in a lot of different calibers. They start off at 1.77. They go all the way up to 45 and 50 caliber. So those are the larger bore, and they're very powerful. And in fact, some of those can be used for deer hunting in some states. They're very powerful, and those do have a recoil. But the important thing with the Springer is making sure that you hold it lightly. And no matter which one of these that you use, you're going to find that your specific gun, whether it's a handgun or a rifle, more particular with a rifle, is it's going to like certain pellets. And if you use a pellet that it doesn't like, it's not going to be as accurate. So make sure that you go through a bunch of different type pellets, brands, and weights, and find out what your gun likes. Uh, they're all different. This one here, I've shot up the Crosman pellets out of it, didn't like it. Ruger happens to make a 22 caliber pellet that it really likes. And so I use that. Between using the correct pellet and holding it correctly, you're going to get some great shots. So anyway, that's my review on these pellet rifles and your alternative for not having an ammo. So if you don't have an ammo or you want to save your ammo until you can get some more and the prices come down, this is an alternative. These are still pretty reasonable. This particular rifle was about $125. You can get them, they go all the way up to the Springers, that's it, or the gas piston. They'll range anywhere from $125 up to $300. So it just depends on the model and the brand and what the features are. So anyway, that's my review. If you like this video, go ahead and click like. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead down and put them down below. And until next time, remember, shoot often, shoot safe, and God bless.